Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. Got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. I have Sunny with me here from Locked On Illini. Going to be talking about our takeaways from the Big Ten in the first conference games that we've had here since Tuesday night. But first, Sunny, how are things in Illinois land? They good? The fans feeling good at this point? How we feeling?
I'm feeling great. Not just because I just watched Purdue lose. I'm just feeling. I'm talking strictly Illini. Our football team just won 9 games this year. We had a solid recruiting class. We're one of the more stable programs on the football side, which I rarely ever say when it comes to being an Illinois fan. And on the basketball side, I'm sure we'll get to it later. I don't think there's a team with a higher ceiling in the conference. And so, a big matchup on Friday night, which we're going to talk about. And life is good. I can't complain.
Very good. Well, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We have our takeaways from the Big Ten's first conference games that happened this week. We also are going to break down and preview that Illinois Northwestern game that we have coming up. And then we're also going to take a look at the KenPom final standings, the prediction they have for the Big Ten. It's a little interesting because a lot of teams are tied, but that's kind of how the computers normally work. But we can give our thoughts there. We also have ESPN putting out some bracketology here very early, so we'll talk about that. And then finally, Jake Diebler had some words about how good the Big Ten is, which you probably would say after somebody in the Big Ten just destroyed you. So you better hope the Big Ten is good, Jake Diebler. Otherwise, it's not looking good for you. We have John here, and John's already starting off the conversation. Penn State smothers Purdue at Happy Valley in surprising fashion. I guess let's start there, Sonny. Okay, so Penn State, this game was a 11-point win for Penn State, but I think most people would agree it was bigger than that for most of the game. I mean, this was probably more like a 20-point win, and Purdue kind of rallies late there. Credit to them for trying to get back into the game, but for the most part, that game was over when they started getting back into it. What was your takeaway from this Penn State Purdue game? Do you think this is more bad news for Purdue, good news for Penn State? What's your thoughts here?
Probably a combination of both. You're right. The fact that I didn't realize that the final score ended up only being a difference of 11. That's good on Purdue because that loss is going to seem a lot worse than I thought it was going to look, come March. But there's 2 teams, and one which we're going to talk about later, which I got to watch this week, and I'm like, that's a really, really well-coached team. And Penn State with Mike Rhodes is just one of them. There's a game plan out there on how to beat Purdue. Marquette showed it to you, and Penn State kind of has the guys to do the same thing, and they did it. And they essentially did it to perfection. Purdue, how do I be nice? Purdue's a very good basketball team and a team that's going to finish top 3 in the Big Ten Conference. But all of us kept trying to tell those fans that, hey, when you lose a generational player, arguably the greatest college basketball player of all time, don't just automatically assume that you're going to finish in first again in the Big Ten. Braden Smith is a fantastic college basketball player, but he's not like an elite of elite basketball player, right? He can be taken advantage of because, unfortunately, things that he can't control. He's smaller. And when you take Braden Smith out of the game, Purdue doesn't have a secondary ball handler. You saw it today. I don't have the turnover numbers in front of me, but TKR, I believe, had 7 turnovers. Anytime they take Braden Smith out of the game, that offense just stalls. And I think we got a glimpse of that today.
Yeah, when Braden Smith was out there in the first half, you could tell like there was just nothing. Purdue had nothing, and you tried to go to TKR down in the post, but I mean, I've been saying it all season long. Take away the right hand. If you take away TKR's right hand, he really has no other response. And there was one time when he tried to go left hand, and when he tried to go left hand, he bobbled the ball and dropped it. It's like the dude doesn't have a left hand, which is fine. I'm not trying to dog the guy. Like, I still think he's a good player, but he just doesn't have a left hand. And Niederhosen, however you pronounce that name, I love the name, but however you pronounce it, like, that guy is a dude, and that guy was the missing piece to this Penn State team, I feel like, because now they have somebody that can not only guard down low, but they can also guard the perimeter so much more aggressively, because if they do get by you, you have somebody else down low who can be that rim protector. It's kind of the antithesis of what's going on with Ohio State right now. Like, they cannot aggressively guard outside because they don't have anybody down low to be the rim protector. Now, I'm sure we'll talk about them later. I'm not excited to do that, but let's keep talking about Penn State for a minute, okay? Give me a break. But at the end of the day, like this Penn State team, they are a much better put together team. They are a very good defensive team, and they have the offense with Nick Kern, Zach Hicks, Puff Johnson. Ace Baldwin didn't even score for
Right.
the first 30 minutes of this game, or 20 minutes of this game. He hardly even scored. I'm trying to find out exactly how much it was. If I go to the
And
where
I'm
can I
about,
find?
while
Oh,
you're looking it up, like I can bring up the
yeah, he
fact,
had 4
Ace
points in the
Baldwin.
first half. 4 points in
Wow.
the first half. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, the comment that Ace Baldwin made before the essentially in the pregame, where I guess I don't know if it was a radio host or a podcast guy or who it was, basically asked Ace Baldwin, "Who are you looking most forward to guarding?" And Ace said, "The point guard at Purdue." And the podcast host followed up, "Oh, you mean Braden Smith?" And he's like, "Yeah, the guy who's supposed to be the best player in the country," or something like that. Purdue fans didn't like that. They felt like Braden Smith deserves a little bit more respect. Well, what happened? Today, I mean, it would have been nicer if Ace had come out with 2025, but Penn State, again, very convincing win. Braden Smith, usually when Braden Smith has bad games, he's just non-existent. He was bad today. He was just not a very good basketball player today, and that's something that you don't usually see.
Yeah, Braden Smith in this game, only 6 points, 3 for 5. So it wasn't like he missed a bunch of shots. Fletcher Lawyer was the other one. He was 3 for 10, 1 for 4 from 3, but he did 8 of 8 of his free throws. But Braden Smith in this one, 3 fouls, 3 turnovers. He did have 5 assists, so still a high assist number up there. But I mean, with this Penn State defense, sure, I think we can definitely talk about the weaknesses of Braden Smith, and they're there, right? But for me, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that discussion, but for me, this was all Penn State's defense and how
Yeah.
aggressive they were and how much, I mean, the press was killing Purdue for most of this game. You have 5 turnovers in this game from Fletcher Lawyer. You're exactly right. They don't have anybody else to be that primary ball handler if Braden Smith isn't out there. Cam Heide, he looked like he was lost in this game. Played 20 minutes, scored 0 points. There was one time when it was kind of like a back and forth. Penn State got the ball and they turned it over under their own hoop, and then Cam Heide went up for a layup. He misses a layup, and then just Penn State gets the ball, goes right down the court right away, and puts up a shot and makes it. And to me, that was the summary of this entire game. Penn State was just more opportunistic, more confident, and that's crazy to see. I haven't seen a team play more confident against Purdue since the national championship game was the first time I saw that in 2 or 3 years, and so to see it again tonight coming from Penn State, I think that's huge for him, and I think Mike Rhodes has got this team down the right path.
Yeah, I think in a year or two, when Rhodes has more of his players in his system, I think Penn State's going to be one of those teams that is going to be one to watch out for. Finish out of the top 6, top 7. I mean, honestly, that could even happen this year, at least from what I saw today.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, so I don't think we'll continue to see this all season from Purdue. I think Matt Painter is too good of a coach for this to continue to happen all year. I mean, they're going to make adjustments, they're going to get better, but it's clear that there is an athleticism weakness to this team. You can out-athlete this Purdue team, which is kind of what we saw from Penn State tonight. We saw the scrappy defense, but then with that as well, we saw a more athletic team than Purdue was. At the end of the day, I think that's probably the key to it.
But that's exactly it, right, JR? For me, it's not that Purdue is a bad basketball team. Not at all. Again, for me, it's still clearly a top 3 Big Ten team. But the things that we talked about today, I don't know if they can fix. Braden Smith, or actually it's not having a secondary ball handler, it's hard to just teach that mid-season. Not having the guys athletically to compete with other teams who can throw out athletes at you, that's not something necessarily you can make an adjustment roster-wise. And now, is Matt Painter a good enough coach to overcome that? Most of us are going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the season's going to be a lot tougher for Boilermaker fans than they were making it out to be.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's hit another game here. Sonny, I'll let you drive it. Okay, what game do you want to hit next here? We don't have to go through all of them, but just kind of some takeaways from each one.
Let's just do Michigan, Wisconsin. I think that was the game I was most looking forward to all week long. 2 teams that have been down, but I would say were the 2 biggest surprises in the Big Ten thus far. Wisconsin, obviously, I think I was kind of curious to see if they were a little overrated, as my perception was. And Michigan, of course, new head coach themselves, really nice roster. The game was at Kohl Center, and I'll start off, JR, if you don't mind. That Dusty May's that second coach that I mentioned earlier. Mike Rhodes and Dusty May are two coaches who I think that their programs are in really, really good shape moving forward. That two-headed big man monster that Michigan has, there's just not many teams in not just the Big Ten, but in the country that can compete with. Like when Danny Wolf plays that way, what do you do? You're talking about a guy who can be a top 10, top 15 player in the country. And it's a very tough mismatch for opposing because you just don't have bigs who can guard guys like that. Wisconsin, again, off to a hot start. Fantastic game against Arizona. But you and I have talked about this privately before. Wisconsin got off on a roll last year, and their fans were very confident, thinking that it could be a potential Big Ten championship caliber team. They've got nice pieces. I just don't know if they're quite there yet. And losing at home to Michigan, who again I've got a comment about Michigan I'm going to make later on the show. It's not something to put your head down about, but I do think it might have been a little bit of a humbling.
Yeah, I mean, like I was impressed with this Wisconsin team, seeing them play their brand of basketball, especially at the beginning of the year. They tried to be all three, and it wasn't working for them. They adjusted. They turned into a different team there, especially against Arizona. Now, I do think Arizona, maybe not as good of a team as we thought at the beginning of the season. They have played a really tough schedule, so I don't think their record quite indicates who they are as a team. But still, like this is a team that when you have more losses than you have wins, what are they 3-4 at this point? Like even when you're playing a harder schedule, you still need to be winning some games and be up there. And so for me, like this Wisconsin team, it's kind of the same thing I was concerned about when I saw them winning in the out of conference. I was like, okay, well, what happens once you get into Big Ten play? Because that's what happened last year, right? Now you saved it by getting to the Big Ten championship game in the tournament, right? You were able to do that later on in the season, but you can't sandwich the season again. You can't have another season where you play really well at the beginning of the season, beginning conference play, and then you lose like 7 or 8 straight in conference play, and then at the end of the season you go to the Big Ten championship game of the tournament again. I mean, I guess you can, but for me, like they have to find some kind of consistency if they want to be that basketball team that they're striving to be. And for them, like I can't say the same things about Greg Gard that I say about Matt Painter. Like for Matt Painter, I say they saw this, they're going to get better. Greg Gard sees this, do they get better? I mean, we'll see. Max Klesmit can't shoot right now. 1 for 9 in that game. John Tonji, like he got to the free throw line and he had 18 points in this one, but he was not efficient. 5 of 12 in this game. He was 3 for 5 from 3, but still like not efficient enough. So for me, like they have to find a way to stay consistent and find some efficiency if they want to be considered a top tier team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Crowell isn't shooting the 3-pointers like he used to. I'm trying to 0 for 2 against Michigan. It's just, I think Philip is kind of in my head right now. He kind of stole what was going to be my next point about John Tanji. I don't know how good he is. I think he's a good basketball player, but the way he was playing, you're talking about all Big Ten, first team, maybe a hint, at all American. I don't think he's quite at that level, and he's kind of symbolic of what I think Wisconsin basketball. Yeah, I still got football in my brain. Wisconsin basketball is, if he is that guy who can carry a team by himself, then he can maybe play an AJ Storr role from last year, but we already know, that what's the ceiling on a basketball team like that. Again, Greg Gard, it's a guy who in the first dozen or so games, Wisconsin Badgers fans love. At the end of the season, they're ready to get rid of, and the Wisconsin administration secretly gives them an extension.
Yeah, and then he loses a bunch of players and he brings a bunch of players in, which like good on you. You're able to start the season this way, but for me, we just got to see you do it consistently. Fisherman asks, who do you think is better right now between Michigan or Wisconsin? Is that what you're asking? I think Michigan is better. Philip, if you were asking about two other teams, put it in there again, and I'll answer it. Philip asked if Kent was demoted to the bench. No, Kent is going to be with me on Mondays for the Power Rankings show primarily. He might pop in on Thursdays every now and then, but he'll primarily be on the Monday show. So can't start him every game. he's not fatigued enough. He's kind of like Umar Ballo. He can only come in for a little bit, you know. Let's see. All right. Should we just talk about Ohio State and how terrible they are?
Okay, I'll talk about Maryland for a minute and then give you the floor. How's that?
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
So I really like Derek McQueen. I think, you know, obviously he came in with a lot of publicity into this year as one of the best freshmen in a freshman loaded class in the Big Ten. But I think Derek, I don't know if he's showing up on mock drafts, and I probably should have looked that up before I started this thought. But I genuinely think that Derek can become one of the best Big Ten bigs that we've had in a very, very long time. His game just translates to what you think of when you think of Big Ten basketball. And him and Julian Reese, they're a really good pairing. You know, how good Maryland is, I'm not sure yet. It's the other side, which I think you're going to talk about. I'm kind of curious on your thoughts on your Ohio State Buckeyes.
Jake Diebler, you just got Kevin Willard. You should never get Kevin Willard.
Ouch.
I've been waiting for that line. Like, honestly, this is what I've expected, right? This is what I've said about Ohio State for at least 2 or 3 weeks now. Ohio State, if they don't hit the three-pointer, they are not going to win you very many basketball games. If they do hit the three-pointer, they're going to be able to beat anybody in the country. Like, it would not surprise me at all if in a week or two from now, Ohio State beats Auburn, you know, and they shoot 65% from three or something like that, because they have the capability to do that. If Micah Parrish goes for 4 for 4 like he has a couple times this season from three, if Bruce Thornton goes 3 for 4 and Judy Mobley has like 5 for 7 game or something like that, like that's a team that could beat anybody in the country. Your biggest issue right now is on defense, because without Aaron Bradshaw, this Ohio State team cannot defend on the perimeter. They cannot be aggressive on the perimeter, and they don't have anybody in pick and roll situations that can guard the ball handler off the pick and roll. And so the guy just rolls and then immediately gets to the basket. And then in other situations, a guy drives to the basket, you have no rim protection. Like, Sean Stewart is still trying to find himself on this team. Even if he did find himself, he's only 6'8". Like, he's a forward. He's not a big in this situation. Austin Parks, like I appreciate how much Austin Parks is trying. Like, he's doing everything he can, but the guy's just kind of oofy. Like, he doesn't have good feet. He doesn't have athleticism. He's doing the best he can. I'm not trying to, disparage the guy or anything like that. But at the end of the day, like, I think this is a combination of you did not have another option if you lost Aaron Bradshaw, and you've probably lost Aaron Bradshaw for the season now. I can't imagine he comes back. Maybe something happens that I don't know about, but with how secretive they're being about all this, it doesn't seem like he's going to come back. And then on top of that, like, you do not have any other option for how to win games other than shoot the lights out. And in this game, Ohio State was 0 for 6 in the first half, and that's exactly how Maryland was able to get out to like a 33-point lead or something like that. The game was 4-4, and I was like, oh, okay, we'll see how this goes. And then immediately Maryland goes on a 46-15 or 13 run or whatever. And I was just like, what in the world is going on here? So I'm not completely out on Ohio State. Like, they can figure it out. But, boy, when you don't have a 5 at all and your backup 5 isn't worth any more than 10 minutes a game, like, Jake Diebler has a really, really tough coaching job on his hands here.
Yeah, it's tough because the roster was constructed I guess I'm just kind of repeating what you're saying, what you just said. There's only one way to win, right? There's no flexibility. There's no different lineups or different variations of guys that he can throw out there to try to confuse. The Big Ten is full of, for the most part, some really good basketball coaches, and you're really not going to make them work too much against Ohio State. A tape in one game is going to work, for basically the entire season. They play a certain way. Just the way the roster's put together is it's not very balanced. It's small, and being small in the Big Ten is just not a good idea, especially when you have teams like Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, who are just full of length. Once we really get into the meat of the Big Ten season, that's when I feel like you may have to start drinking while hosting the show.
Well, I won't do that. Just water for me. We'll check back when Ohio State is 8-20 or something like. If they get to that point, then all bets are off. Yeah, we'll see how Ohio State does. We'll talk a little bit more about their kind of future outlook for the season and other teams and stuff like that. Sonny, probably only have time to touch on one more game. What do you want to do? Oregon, USC. You want to talk about that shot at the end of the game for Iowa Northwestern? We can. We can talk about Michigan State's dominance wherever you want to go. Let's do it.
I guess let's just do Oregon, USC, just because Oregon is, talked about as one of the other teams that is going to be contending for the conference championship. Obviously, this is a Pac-4 game, so it's not really one of those welcome to the Big Ten moments that would probably have been the popular theme, for most radio shows or podcast shows today. I mean, they were down big. A lot of people, including you and I, at least we were talking about it, like there was a big chance that they were going to lose to USC, who, I say this kindly, is an awful basketball team. So, once I'm very curious to watch Oregon once they play the Illinois, the Purdue's, the Michigans. Same goes for UCLA. I just want to see how their style is going to adjust playing a true Big Ten schedule. I don't have much to say about USC, but besides that, they're bad.
Yeah, Oregon was lucky that USC only had 30 points in the first half. I mean, I wouldn't say Oregon's defense was awful or anything like that, but there was definitely opportunities for USC to score more than 30 points in the first half. So, I mean, obviously Oregon comes back, and in the second half they do a whole lot better in this one. But at the end of the day, like if you're an Oregon fan, you're kind of going through a roller coaster a little bit right now, right? You just saw them take down Alabama. You just saw them have a great week of basketball, and then they come back and they put up this game against USC, and you're just kind of like, okay, maybe USC is good, and it's like, no, they lost terribly. Like, you thought Ohio State, Maryland was bad. They were much worse against St. Mary's early on in the season. It was just kind of throughout the entire game, not just all in the first half. So for Oregon, like, I mean, I want to give them their props, right? Because they did win the game, they did come back, but at the end of the day, like, this cannot be a consistent thing from Oregon, only scoring 23 points in the first half. Like, you're going to have to find your guys better, and they're going to have to be more efficient in their scoring. I mean, you only had one guy who had more than 3 points in the first half. Everybody else, for the most part, like, was not scoring at all. Now, Jackson Shelstad came back in the second half. That's great. But for the most part, like, you had Tracy get ejected, Nate Biddle, he fouled out on this one. Like, you can't be having that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Who do they play next? I just had that off the top of my. Regardless, it doesn't ultimately matter. Again, it's they've got to go really. You see it, okay? So
yeah, so they kept them
having all the entire time. West Coast teams play each other. Yeah. They're a team that I'm going to really be interested in watching and seeing again when it comes to not even what we perceive to be the top of the Big Ten. I just want to see what they do against teams like a Maryland or a team against like Penn State that we saw earlier today, because I know they've got that good coach and they got a really good roster on hand, but the Big Ten is a tough conference, which I think we're going to talk about later, arguably the best in the country. And they're definitely one of the teams that outside Illinois, which I follow for obvious reasons, that I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Oregon is going to do a really good job at home this season. They're going to struggle on the road. They're probably going to be an 11-9, maybe 12-8 is their ceiling in the conference. Probably more like 10-10 in the conference this season. And then they're going to come back in the Big Ten tournament, and they're going to make a run and probably be one of the final 2 or 3 teams, or 2 or 4 teams in the Big Ten tournament, because like this is a team that just I don't trust their consistency on the road this season, and I could see them losing a game or 2 at home depending on who they play. I mean, they're supposed to lose to KenPom has them winning all of their home games. They don't lose a single home game on KenPom, but they're going to drop at least one. Maybe it's UCLA next week, who knows, but they're going to drop one at some point, and it's going to be hard for them on the road because I just don't think they're a road team. We saw them on the road against Oregon State. They had a really hard first half. Of course, they came back. Congrats to them. But there's going to be certain teams in the Big Ten. Like, you got away with it against USC and Oregon State. You're not going to get away with it against, I mean, name your team. Like, okay, maybe you're not going to get away with it against Nebraska. You're not going to get away with it against Rutgers. Rutgers has too much in Bailey and Harper. So you're just not going to be able to do it. All right, I put a poll out. You guys said, I said, who had the most impressive Big Ten opener performance? Penn State, Michigan, and Maryland all tied. Nobody voted for Michigan State. Well, I was trying to help Michigan State out there. All right, I guess they were all impressive. So, all right, Sonny, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this Illinois Northwestern game. Illinois travels to Northwestern. Northwestern had some bad luck lately. The game against Butler, people are saying they should have won the game, right? The game against Iowa, Josh Dix hits the game-winning shot there at the end. But I would say make your free throws, and you don't have to worry about it. Ty Berry there missed a big free throw that would have made this a tied game instead, but they missed their free throws. And so at the end of the day, like, Northwestern, they're probably a little hungry. They want to get the win. They're at home in this one, but Illinois is looking like one of the best teams in the country in my mind. What are some of your thoughts and key things to look for in this game?
Well, it's interesting because Illinois is coming off an 8-day break, and Northwestern has like a 2-day turnaround. So you're giving Brad Underwood 8 days for this game. I disagree with David French, where he says it's a trap game for Illinois. Northwestern and Illinois, they just don't like each other. And Illinois, we lost at Northwestern last year. It's a tough place to play. Literally every Northwestern fan goes to that game. It's sold out already. It's going to be a tough environment. I do think that the key for Northwestern and the key for every Big Ten team, basically, who plays Illinois, and those of you who watch me on Locked On Illini, you know what I'm about to say is, can you get to 80 points? Because I think Illinois can sleepwalk to 80. Now, Northwestern is actually one of the teams that I can see getting to 80. They got Barnheiser, Martinelli, 2 20-point scores. How many teams in the country can say that they have 2 20-point scores on their team? I'm very curious on our team.
I heard that the other day. I think they're the only team in the country. I tried to look it up. I'm pretty sure they're the only team in the country.
Which is wild. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, again, offensively, I'm not worried for the Illini, but I'm very curious defensively who we match up with who. We have Kylan, who we usually use as our lockdown guy against the opposing point guard. Do we let him play a bigger Barnheiser and try to minimize him? Do we go against Leach? Then do we set Trey White against the other guy? It's one of those where Northwestern has 3 really good scores, 2 fantastic scores, and Leach himself is a threat as well. If you shut one of them down, one of the 3, I don't know if the rest of the team can make up the difference to get to 80, which, again, I think Illinois sleepwalks to.
Yeah, I think in this game you're going to see Illinois pound the paint more than you have this season. I just don't think Nicholson is right this season for whatever reason. Now, he had a really tough guard last game in Owen Freeman. Owen Freeman's pretty athletic, and he's able to play off the perimeter and then go inside, and that was a real detriment for Nicholson. But at the end of the day, like, he just doesn't look like the same player that he's been the past few years on the offensive end. He's not doing as well. I think not having Boo, there is definitely an adjustment for this team, but it's still a little bit more difficult for him. I could see Illinois just trying to get to the basket way more in this game. Illinois is averaging over 30 points per game and points in the paint, which is good, but they're averaging 36% of their points in the paint, which is really low in college basketball because they can hit shots from so many different spots. They can score all around the court. They don't have to go down in the paint. But in this one, if I'm Brad Underwood, like, I'm using this game's opportunity to get into the paint, assert our dominance early, and really try to beat down this Northwestern team and not let them come back. Because you don't want to get the crowd into this one.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But, this is one of the things where we just got finished talking about Jake Diebler. Like, Brad Underwood, fortunately, has built a very flexible roster. I agree with you in the sense where you can start early in the game, throwing it down to Visic, and hey, go to work. And now Northwestern actually has one of the few players in the country who matches up size-wise. But if things don't work out down low, Brad Underwood can he doesn't even have to make a substitution. Avicic can hit 3-pointers. He hit 6 for 9, against Arkansas. So it's one of those, So it's one of those. The pressure's all on Northwestern, in my opinion. They already have 2 losses. One to Iowa, but 2 losses on the season. Illinois, for me, and JR, you know about this for me privately when it comes to the Illini. I think the team is super young, obviously still getting acclimated to each other. I think they're going to lose games that they should win early in the year, but once the meat of the Big Ten season comes about in January and February, I think that they very well, having gone through all these battles, they've got one of the toughest out-of-conference schedules in the country. I think that's by design, and Brad Underwood's going to have this team playing, hopefully, top-notch once it really matters in March.
Yeah, I'm very confident in Brad Underwood, not only later in the season, but I mean, last season really showed me something with him, with his in-game adjustments, just how well he knew his team. And I was kind of concerned about that a little bit going into the year. Like, would he know this team super well to make the adjustments he needed to make? I think you saw some weaknesses against Alabama that he wasn't really able to, coach against in the game, but the adjustments they made for that Arkansas game were huge. And so for Illinois, it's just all about building off that Arkansas game. You've not really played a bunch of tough games yet so far this season, so you've kind of just looked impressive against subpar opponents. But for me, this Northwestern game, even though Northwestern is not they're not Alabama, they're not Arkansas, but they're an opponent that you're going into their building. They don't like you, you don't like them, and they're really going to have to try and find a way to win in any way that Northwestern allows them to, because there's going to be opportunities there, and they're just going to have to take those opportunities. And whether it's going down in the paint or whatever it is, they're going to have to do that. So, give me some thoughts on KJ in this game, right? He's going on the road, true freshman, had some issues with turnovers, but it's also just kind of because of how much he is as the primary ball handler of his team. Like, you're just going to have turnovers at a certain point. You worried about him going into a hostile environment in this one? What are your thoughts?
He's someone I don't really worry about hostile environments, just because he's played in Europe for the last couple of years, and there's nothing more hostile than watching a game out there. He's someone who started off playing well, but he wasn't exactly as aggressive as a lot of us thought he was going to be. I think he had like 4 shots in his first game, 3 in his second, and 4 again in his third game. And all of a sudden, us Illini fans were kind of reevaluating, like, hey, is he just a playmaker, or is he going to understand that, hey, he's supposed to be the guy at the end of the game? And you saw that against Arkansas. Anytime Arkansas got it within double digits, 10, 9 points, Kasparis was basically like, I got it. Don't worry about it. He would make a play. He finished with his best game as a collegiate player. I think, I'm not too worried about him. I don't know who Northwestern's going to honestly put up against KJ. I think KJ might be able to get double-digit free throws, which is a trait that's very underrated. It's something that was so integral to the team last year because Terrence Shannon Jr. was so good at it, and the fact that we're kind of able to duplicate that again this year with Kasparis. Again, it's just cheap, easy, efficient points, and I'm not too worried about Kasparis. The guy I have my eye on, and again, the Locked On listeners know this, is Will Riley. I think what we're missing, we've seen how good Will Riley can be. But if we get, that first game, Eastern Illinois, Will Riley, then I'm sitting here even more confident that Illinois can win this Big Ten conference, because that's eventually what I'm counting on. Right now, he has up and down games. I think last game he was 2 for 9, which is crazy if you think about it. Will Riley, arguably your best scorer, went 2 for 9, and you still put up 90 against Arkansas, which is kind of echoing what I've been saying all show long. Will Riley, I think, to me, early in the schedules, I'm just looking for him to not make the shots that he's taking tougher than they need to be, because he's a fantastic scorer. I think he's still the leading scorer on our team, if last time I checked, coming off the bench, not playing as many minutes as some of the other guys. If he gets into a flow, if he slows down and gets comfortable with the speed of college basketball, then I think he's another guy that, along with Kasparis, along with the Avicic, that you're just going to be seeing, highlights on a nightly basis.
I think those are great keys, and I think those are great players to look for. I was thinking the same thing with Will Riley. He needs to come out in this game. He needs to assert his dominance. He's one of the best young players in the country. Unfortunately, he's not starting for Illinois, which is fine. I'm not saying like unfortunately like he needs to. I'm just saying like he's a really good player. So he doesn't always get that time, but there's a lot of really good players out there. So I mean that's the product of being on an Illinois team. If you don't want to be around good players, go play for I was gonna say a team, but I don't want to disparage them. They're in the Big Ten, so I won't. My key for this one, and then we'll get to score predictions. My key for this one is Illinois holding onto the ball. Now, Illinois has done a very good job of not turning the ball over this season. Like I said, KJ struggled with it a little bit, but I think there's also some thought process there of like how much he is the ball handler and stuff like that. So I'm not too worried about it. But Justin Mullins in this game has 17 steals on the year. His steal percentage rate is 5.5%. Like that's huge in college basketball. So really big rate for him. And Brooks Barnheiser, KJ Windham, and Ty Berry, they've also been picking guys' pockets, getting in passing lanes, doing a really good job with that. So we'll see what that looks like. I could also see a situation here where Illinois, like Northwestern gets a little too greedy and they just start burning guys and they go on a 17-2 run or something like that, and then the game's over because Northwestern just got too greedy trying to get too many steals and stuff. And so we'll see. I think it could either be the thing that keeps Northwestern in the game, or it could be the thing that is their detriment and the game's over by halftime. So Sonny, what's your score prediction and who do you think wins?
I mean, I do think Illinois wins this game, but I'm being very upfront that I would not be shocked or surprised if Northwestern pulls it off. They're just, I think, hungrier right now. Northwestern, especially with that last-minute loss to Iowa, I think they're a very angry basketball team, and I'll never admit this to Kent's face, but Chris Collins is a very good basketball coach, and so I know he's going to have the team ready. But I do think Illinois prevails. I'll go with the final score of 84-75.
That's good. I think that's good. I'm gonna have a hard time seeing Illinois keep Northwestern under 70, and I don't think it's because Illinois has bad defense. I actually like their defense in some ways this year. I think it's they're not exactly the same as they were last year, but they're doing some interesting things. But I do think that Illinois gets over 80 in this one, so I'm looking at something similar to yours, but a little bit higher of a win margin, probably somewhere around 86-73 or something like that. Low 70s to mid to high 80s for Illinois. So I do like Illinois in this game. We'll see what happens, but that's a really, really interesting to think about. So, all right, Sonny, we are going to do an ad really fast, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the projected KenPom record. Stay with us, everybody. CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site, it's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, I want to say we appreciate you joining us. Go ahead and like and subscribe. That definitely helps us out whenever you do that, whether you're on the football channel or you're on the basketball channel, which, by the way, we have a basketball channel. Links in the description if you want to go over there and subscribe to that as well. That's where we'll be posting our additional content, game recaps, videos that we do here that we kind of break up. So if you miss a show, you can always come back and watch a segment or something like that we do. So definitely go over there. You'll want to subscribe to the basketball channel as well. All right, Sonny, we have KenPom. I kept the thing up there. I apologize. I'll change that here in a second. KenPom record predictions for the end of the season. Now, it is an analytical approach, so you do see a lot of the same like conference records and stuff like that. There's several 13-7 teams here. Penn State and Michigan State are both 11-9. I would think maybe Penn State grows by 1 after the game today against Purdue. Maybe Purdue drops to 12-8 or something like that. But just tell me here, Sonny, do you think the KenPom record predictions here are accurate? Like, where do you think they're accurate? Where do you think maybe there's some inaccuracies here? What's your thoughts?
Honestly, it's not too bad. Taking a look at it, the placement I might have some issues with, but when I take a look at those first 7 teams, outside, I would put Indiana in there. But outside that, I think, that might be how I do it too. Oh, Rutgers as well. I probably have Rutgers in the top half pretty easily. But specifically, I just talked about Maryland earlier, and that might be a little overzealous on KenPom's part. I think they're a good basketball team, or at least they got like Derek McQueen. I don't know if they're this good, obviously, but Oregon, I'm on wait and see mode, but I can see why people are so high on them. Purdue, I've always maintained would be around three or four for the most part. I think Illinois is a little underranked. Penn State, I actually really like them at what was that 7. I think that would surprise a lot of people if you had told them that in the preseason. But Mike Rhodes' team, from what I saw today, looked really good. Izzo with Michigan State, they're looking. Now that we're going through these rosters, it's there's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten Conference. There's no elite team, but the left side of the screen looks about right, and the right side of the screen looks about right. So I guess good job on KenPom.
Yeah, I think that Wisconsin there in the middle is really interesting. We're really going to see Wisconsin go 10-10 in the Big Ten. They started off so hot, but at the same time, we talked about last year, they started off really hot, and they came to my thoughts as well about Rutgers 7-13 in the conference. I don't see them having the same conference record as Washington. I'm really down on Washington this year, so I feel like they're a little high on them. I'll tell you who my sleeper is though in this one, a team that could be 2 or 3 wins better than KenPom has given them. Give me Nebraska. I like this Nebraska team and how they played against Creighton. Now, we'll see if they can be there that way the entire year, but man, they were money at home last year. If we see something like that again where they're money at home and then they went on the road and beat Creighton like that, I mean, watch out. This could be a Nebraska team that could steal a game or two on the road and do really well at home. You might see 11-9, 12-8. I think is a bit of a stretch, but I could see if they get 1 or 2 big wins, they might get themselves there. So I'm going to be looking at that Nebraska team and seeing they might just make it back to the NCAA tournament again this year after not being there after being there last year and falling short in their game. They might just get their first tournament win this year. We'll see.
I like that. I haven't really put much thought into Nebraska, but that's another team that's really had to revamp that roster. But I like Nebraska. My sleeper team, I can't really call them sleeper because technically, according to this graph, they're tied for first. But I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think Michigan could honestly win the Big Ten Conference. I think
they could too.
The way they played against Wisconsin, and it pains me to say this that now that Juwan Howard is gone. And you have
the Juwan Howard era. I love
it. We enjoyed that greatly as Illini fans. Now that he's gone, Dusty May is just a really good ball coach, and Michigan has a lot of talent still on that team. And the scary part is a lot of those guys are going to be coming back next year. So I think Michigan's just a team that not a lot of people talked about during the offseason. I did say I really liked the Dusty May hire when they did it. And now that we've got to see, 5-6 games, I think Michigan might be ahead of schedule and a team that very well might win the conference this year.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan going into the season, I felt like they had some really good talent. I felt like they had some really good players. I mean, Roddy Gale, he's kind of fitting into exactly what you need him to be on this Michigan team. Trey Donaldson's doing a good job, even though he's not being as much of the ball handler as I thought he would. I thought he would turn more into that, and that would be kind of what saved Michigan, but that game that Daniel Wolf had against Wisconsin, like I don't know how you take the ball out of his hands as much if he's doing what he did in that game again. Now that was one game. I still think that for a good amount of this season, Michigan has struggled to be a little physical and they've struggled to not turn the ball over. But boy, they fixed all those issues against Wisconsin. It looked like so. If they can keep all those issues corrected and keep playing the brand of defense that they were playing against Wisconsin. You could very well be looking at this Michigan team fighting to win the Big Ten Conference this year. We'll see. But Dusty May, I mean, Vlad Golden is figuring out his role on the team. He's playing much better. He's playing much more physical. 24 points. I think that was a career high for him in that last game against Wisconsin. So, overall, I think it's a good year for Michigan so far. I agree with what you were saying about Maryland. I think they're a little too high. I mean, I like their guard play. I love Jameer Young. Don't get me wrong. He was one of my favorite players in the conference, but he was just too, they were too dependent on him.
Exactly.
And Julian Reese, I mean, he is quietly going to be one of the best big men in the conference. Mm-hmm. He's not going to get as much love because of Derek Queen and the freshman sensation that he is, but I mean, if I was picking somebody out of this conference to be my 5, Julian Reese is right up there as somebody that I pick. Probably top 3 up there. Somebody I'd pick to be on my team because he's physical, a rebounder, good around the rim. He just does a lot of really good things for this Maryland team.
Yeah, Maryland is one of those teams who I was giving compliments to earlier in the episode, but for me, it's like they're more of a middle of the pack team, which again, if you had asked me in the offseason, I would have been surprised by. I would have probably have put them in the bottom third, especially after losing a guy like Young, as you mentioned. But I just think they're actually more fun to watch right now because last year there was basically give Jameer Young the ball and hope we win the game. Whereas this year, as we talked about, they've got 2 really talented big guys. I'm really looking forward to watching Queen throughout his Big Ten career. Hopefully he sticks around for more than a year or 2. And I think he can become, one of the all-timers. But yeah, second overall, that's being a little too overexcited. Penn State against the other team. I know we just kind of talked about them. They've got a really good coach. They've got a very solid roster. I think that Penn State's one of those teams that if a team at their talent level or below show up to Penn State not ready, Penn State will win clearly. But as we saw tonight, even a team like Purdue, a team like Illinois, Michigan, whatever, if they show up unprepared, Penn State in that environment with that coaching staff and that game planning can win essentially any night in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Penn State used to be that team that it's like, oh yeah, we're playing Penn State tonight. Good on us. But then Shrewsbury got there. It was not that way at all. Mike Rhodes last year. I mean, they upset how many teams in the Big Ten? Like they lost to Bucknell last year. It was like, what in the world is going on? Yeah. But then at the same time, they go out and they beat Illinois in that whatever gym that I mean that's what they have wrestling at. Like
never made sense to me.
Sorry to bring up the hurt times, but you made it to the Elite Eight last year, so you're good. You're good. Let me ask you about one more team, and then we'll move on. The team that I'm probably the most perplexed at here, just because I've not really seen it so far this season, but I also feel like they kind of have it in them, is UCLA, 21-10, 13-7 in the conference. Like, I don't know. Is UCLA going to go on the road and get 3 wins this year on the road? Like, are they going to go perfect at home and get 3 wins on the road? I mean, maybe they go on the road against Washington, USC and win those, but can't imagine they go perfect at home. Somebody's going to get them at some point, and then they win 2 or 3 more games on the road that's not USC, Washington. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying I dislike UCLA. I like UCLA this year, but 13-7 to me just seems a little overzealous.
Yeah, I'm with you though. I really don't have an opinion on UCLA just yet. Once the season rolls around, and I'm of course talking about the conference season, I think when we get to see them play, night in and night out against Big Ten competition, I'll have a better idea. Oregon, at least I can still see how talented of a group that is. And again, I really trust their coaching staff. UCLA, I have reservations about the way they put their roster together. And it's a team I'm still very much in wait and see mode. 5, according to this, what you're saying makes sense about, sweeping, but 5 is probably where I'd rank them, anywhere from 5 to 9 in that area, but not with much confidence. I just need to see a couple more games.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Big Ten, with the way that it clusters in the middle, the difference between 5 and 9 is like a couple points, right? Like the way it goes. I lied. One more team, because we haven't really talked about them all that much, and there's definitely a lot of talk around them. I went to Thanksgiving and watched a basketball game with a bunch of fans from them, and it was one of the most interesting experiences of my life. Did I tell you about Thanksgiving for me? I had 40 people in one house.
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah, you
okay.
did tell me that.
We had 40 people in one house, all big IU fans, huge IU fans. And that Gonzaga game is going on. I mean, like, I think Mike Woodson would have died if he was in that room with the way they were yelling at him and the way they were mad. But they come back, they beat Providence, they destroyed whoever they played on Tuesday night, Sam Houston or whoever they played. But I mean, what's your thoughts on the Hoosiers? 9-11 seems low to me because it seems like this team has more talent than 9-11, but I guess KenPom has a Mike Woodson negative rating or something in there.
I think college basketball has a Mike Woodson negative rating. 9-11 is way too low. I think just based on purely talent, that team is still going to finish in the top 5, top 6. But I'm not worried about Indiana, and I hate to say this. I know we have friends of the show who are big Hoosier fans. I've watched enough Indiana that, again, it's a great. I think it's the most talent in the Big Ten Conference reside in Bloomington. But I've said this all off season long. I don't have any faith in that coach to figure it out at the college basketball level, and everything that I've seen this year really hasn't changed my mind. I don't think Indiana's a top 3 team in the Big Ten Conference. I think if Mike Woodson doesn't make it out of the first weekend, and I'm not even saying losing the first game. I'm saying if he doesn't get it to the Sweet 16, I think he's gone, and I think he should be gone because, again, with the amount of talent on that basketball team, if you can't win with those type of players, it's time to reevaluate what you do for a living.
Yeah, I was just looking at their record really fast because I want to see who they had them losing to. They have Indiana. KenPom has Indiana losing every single game from January 11th all the way to February 23rd.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine Indiana fans?
I would be concerned for all of my family that's Indiana fans.
Your ratings would be great though.
Well, yeah, they do hate watch. They're one of those fan bases. Fishman, Ohio State is worse. Fisherman and I are going through it. Not easy being a Buckeye fan right now. All right, Sonny, I'll get you off the KenPom here. Big Ten seeding in the NCAA tournament by ESPN. They put out their week 4 seeding. So this was on Monday. This was before the games that happened Tuesday and stuff. So obviously they didn't take into account Ohio State getting bludgeoned by Maryland in this one. But I still thought it was interesting to think about and talk about Purdue being the highest at 3. They had Oregon all the way up at 4, Wisconsin at 5, Ohio State and Illinois at 6, Michigan State 7, Michigan, UCLA 8. Maryland 10th, Indiana 11th, and then the first Big Ten team that was out would be Nebraska. Everyone else not seeded. Definitely see an issue here with Penn State. I think they are definitely a tournament team this year. Do you see any other issues or anything that you're like, I think they're right on there? They're right.
Right, or meaning that they got incorrectly? Because I think Rutgers should be.
Sorry.
I mean, Rutgers should be. I wouldn't put Rutgers, down there with the Washingtons and the USCs, basically for what you said earlier. I mean, you have that much talent on the basketball team. They'll figure out a way. I think Peichel is a really good coach. Illinois, again, I'm biased. I've got the hat on. I've got the orange and blue colors behind me. But it's just one of those wait and see type of things. Usually, actually, if I'm being truthful with you, I tend to be pessimistic about the basketball side. And I'm usually more optimistic when it comes to football. So the fact that I feel confident here with the basketball team isn't one of those where, oh, here he goes again. No, I just genuinely, I've watched the Big Ten basketball conference as a whole for the first couple of weeks. I've seen Illinois, obviously, every single game. And I just think that if everyone hits their ceiling, and, they may not, they're a very young team. I just think Illinois has a potential to be first or second, in the Big Ten. Purdue's interesting just because how many teams can do what Marquette and Penn State have done, right? Like the game plan's out there now, because I don't know if a lack of secondary ball handler and, attacking their wings with athletic guys is something you can really correct in the middle of the season. Purdue's still going to win most of their games, but there's going to be, some really good coaches in the Big Ten Conference who will game plan according to that Marquette and Penn State, game tape. And I'm curious to see what their record is going to look like.
Yeah, I definitely think in this one, Purdue is probably the most interesting one to me because we did just see him lose to Penn State in the way that they did. Marquette did the same thing. You're correct. And so, what are they going to do to try and combat that when teams come at it with them again? That scrappy kind of defense that just takes Braden Smith out of the game and does those kind of things. I think that Ohio State and Illinois being the same seed is insulting to Illinois. I mean, even with how Ohio State was playing before Maryland. Like I know they went down to the wire with Pitt, but they should have never been late in that game with Pitt. Like they should have hit their free throws. They should have done a better job shooting in the regulation time and the free throws there in the overtime. Like they should have never lost that game. And so, when you have an Ohio State team playing like that and then they get bludgeoned on the road by Maryland, like I just don't have any confidence in that team. So for me, there's no way Ohio State is seated anywhere around Illinois. Like Ohio State at this point is going to be lucky to be 9th, 10th at this point. So they're probably going to be left by the computers again. That happened a couple years ago. But Michigan definitely going to be higher than 8th in my mind. I mean, unless they just regress and that Wisconsin game was a total abnormality. Like that, they're definitely going to be higher than 8th. And at the end of the day, like I don't know with Oregon yet. Like I said, I don't know if I have the confidence in Oregon to win on the road enough to be a 4 seed. Definitely think they have some ability to do that, but if I'm looking at the Big Ten right now, my teams that could be the highest seeded, the highest ranked for the Big Ten, you got to put Illinois up there. I still think Purdue has the coaching to be up there, and you got to have Michigan up there. And I think all 3 of those teams have a good shot to be 3, 4, 5 seeds, if not higher.
Yeah, I think as of right now, if we had to create tiers, those 3 are in the top tier. And then you have the next group, where you have Wisconsin, Oregon. I think Michigan State has looked pretty decent. But yeah, when it comes to the top 3 teams, Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan sounds about right to me.
Yeah. Fisherman, I didn't see Pitt get crushed by Mississippi State, but I made a game recap video for that Ohio State Pitt game, and I told people, I said, I don't think Pitt's as good as everybody thinks they are. Like, a lot of people haven't won in the ACC at this point. I know the ACC's down. Like, it's not a great year for them, but I don't see them winning the ACC or even being top 5 in the ACC this year, but everybody else thinks they are. But, I mean, if you're losing to Mississippi State like that, I think that was the SEC ACC challenge too. So, Sonny, give me one team. We'll do this and then we'll move on. Give me one team that is not seeded that you think has a good not Penn State, that has a good chance to be seeded in the tournament here. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I mean, for me, it's Rutgers. Just because I think they've got 2 guys who are future lottery picks, and not just lottery picks, top 3, top 4 NBA picks. And I still really like Steve Pikiell as a coach. And so when you have a good coach with, all Big Ten talent, I think, if things go right, Rutgers can figure things out and, make a run in the conference.
I think that's a good pick. We'll see Ohio State and Rutgers play this week, Saturday or Sunday, one of those 2. So that'll be interesting to see. For me, I kind of gave Nebraska their love earlier and stuff, so I don't want to go back to them again. I don't know if they'll make the tournament, but I think Iowa's going to be much closer to making the tournament than I think some people think. I really like Owen Freeman. Peyton Stanford to me is an NBA player. He's not like a lottery pick or anything like that, like the Murray twins were, but I think he's an NBA player, and I like the way their point guards have been playing, Thwell and Brock Harding here lately as well. So I mean, they obviously haven't been perfect, but for me, that Iowa team, you get yourself a good point guard that can run that offense, you're going to be in much better shape. So if the Iowa point guard starts doing that, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way sneaking into the tournament as well. So, all right, everybody, we are going to hit a commercial really fast, and then we'll come back. And Jake Diebler had some comments that we'll get to. Be right back. Home Field is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Home Field brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Home Field digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. Appreciate everybody being here and joining us. Jake Diebler, after the game, had some comments about the Big Ten. And honestly, I'd probably be making the same comments too to try and make myself look better. But the big thing he said was, we have the best league in the country, talking about the Big Ten, top to bottom. Now, the entire thing, he's talking about the parity and how every single night, like you can't take a night off. Every single night you're playing hard and you're trying to fight for your life and win a game. I do think you probably have a night off against USC and Minnesota, unfortunately for those fans. But as we just saw against Oregon, they didn't have the night off against USC themselves. So maybe I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, like, he's talking about how the Big Ten is the best top to bottom. Sonny, is the Big Ten the best team, like the best conference top to bottom, or is it kind of more about what you were talking about earlier, where there's just not an elite team in this conference, and so it's kind of like the Big 12 in football, where it's like anybody can beat anybody. Maybe not that bad, but anybody can beat anybody, but anybody can beat anybody because there's nobody that sets themselves apart that much. What's your thoughts there?
See, it's interesting because it's one of those where, we line up 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3 against all the other conferences. I don't know how many of the 1 versus 1s we win. I don't know how many of the 2 versus 2s we win, but I think we win a lot of the 7 versus 7, the 8 versus 8. We're again kind of talking about the depth of this conference. I don't know if any team in this conference is capable of winning the national championship this year. I think, I would be shocked, and a lot of things would have to go right for something like that to happen. I can't say the same for some of the other, when it comes to the SEC or Big 12, I think there's clearly teams that have that ability. But, we just saw all those teams in the same graph, right? And I scanned through it and I'd be like, oh, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. And I just kept going. Even I kind of caught myself realizing, wow, there's a lot of pretty decent teams in this conference. Is it the best league in the country? No. Do I blame Jake Diebler for saying that? No. But again, it's your definition, right? If you're talking about the best couple teams or the conference that has the most teams that can win the national championship, which is basically the way what the SEC football side always describes it being the best conference in the world. Big Ten clearly is not that. But if you're talking about the best basketball, you turn the TV on and there's 2 teams from this conference. Which conference is going to have the best game night in and night out? I think the answer could very well be the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think Jake Diebler was right, but also wrong at the same time. I think he was wrong that the Big Ten is not the best conference. I know some people call me a bit of a homer and a honk and stuff like that because I carry the water too much for the Big Ten. That's fine, but I'll be honest. In this situation, the SEC is the best conference in basketball right now. There's really no way to argue that. They just went 14-2 against
Right.
the ACC in their ACC SEC challenge. Like a lot of season that there. I almost messed that up. There's too many good teams and there's too much parity in that conference for them not to be the best. Now, I will say though that the big Jake Diebler is right. There is so much parity in this conference because there are so many teams that are just kind of on that similar level. It's exactly what we've talked about with the Big Ten for years, where the difference between the third best team in the conference and the 14th best team in the conference is like 1 or 2 wins sometimes. That's just kind of how the conference works itself out. So no, you're not going to get a national championship contender from this conference this year. I don't think so. I mean, maybe Illinois finds their path late in the year and they just go on a run in the tournament, or Oregon does something crazy like that. I don't know. Maybe somebody could do something crazy like that, but I'm not projecting that to happen. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams in the Big Ten. Like if we made a bracket today where it had 8 Big Ten teams in it, I don't think anybody's picking a Big Ten team to go past maybe the Sweet 16. I mean, you might get one to the Elite Eight, but I don't think you're picking very many teams to get past the Sweet 16 at this point.
Yeah, gun to my head, I'd probably pick Illinois to get to Elite Eight, but the run stops there. Purdue, from what I saw today, again, I'm lacking a little confidence in, it's really hard to win basketball games when you don't have the best player in college basketball history in the middle, just being a huge advantage for you. So, yeah, I agree with your take. It's just one of those where, it'd be interesting doing a bracket this early, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think if you're a national championship team, you have to have some kind of elite trait, elite something with your team and what you do. And I don't think any Big Ten team has that totally elite trait other than Illinois, who can just score on anybody because of the athleticism and the crazy talent they have on the offensive end. So we'll see if that defense can get with it there at the end. But yeah, I agree.
I mean, the defense, I think efficiency-wise, I read a stat somewhere, they're top 25 in the country.
Yeah.
It's different from last year. Last year's team was just awful defensively, and a lot of people had a perception, hand up, me included, that would carry over. And Brad Underwood said it in the post game. against Ole Miss, saying, second graders could score 70 against this basketball team. So, which kind of reinforced that image. But everything we've seen, the difference between this year's team and last year's team is last year's team didn't have a true point guard and it didn't have a true center. So, when it comes to roster flexibility, Ty Rodgers was forced to guard point guards, and Ty Rodgers is a very good defensive player, but not against point guards. And Coleman Hawkins, as good of a defensive player as he is, he was just getting beaten down by Big Ten bigs. This year, you can't do that. Kylan Boswell is shutting down every potential All-American point guard that he gets lined up with. And Tomislav Ivicic is a good 7'1", 260. And behind him, you have a Morez Johnson, who I believe 6'9", 245. We have the bigs and we have the right guys in place this year, which has really helped Illinois on the defensive side out.
Yeah, I didn't mean that from the point of like Illinois didn't have any defense. Definitely not the same as last year. Like they have more dominant defenders on their team who can shut guys down. I'm not trying to disparage Illinois here, but I just watched that Alabama game, and there were times when Alabama got on runs, and it looked like Illinois didn't have an answer for him on defense. And that's kind of what I'm alluding to with Brad Underwood is like, can he find those situations where he's going to stop the other team, get a bucket or two for his team, and then start get rolling again and start coming back with their own run. You have to have that. You have to have that rhythm on defense to go into your offense as well. And right now with a young Illinois team, that's hard to find. But like I said before, Brad Underwood's a very good coach. He can help him find it. It's just going to be something we're going to have to see throughout the year, I think. So, but you're exactly right. Not the same defense as last year. It's not exactly the same. So, all right. Sonny, I think we put in a good show here, man. Is there anything you want to tell people about Locked On Illini or anything before we get out of here?
Yeah, sure. I did want to address a couple of the comments, which I'm sure you saw. This hat is not actually Carolina blue. It's blue with gray, and I think there's the LED lights and the reflection may make it look like it's Carolina blue, but it's simply just a logo of the show, Locked On Illini. If you are an Illini fan, just do a quick search. I do a half hour to 40 minutes of Illini content every single day. So find us on YouTube, your favorite audio platform. Whatever you like. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, which a lot of Illini fans are, I also do Bears on Tap twice a week. So, yeah, I appreciate JR. You letting me come on, and hopefully this won't be the last time this season.
Always appreciate it, Sonny. Love getting your takes and your thoughts and everything. So it's interesting. Illinois fans, some Illinois fans are my favorite that we have listeners and people that come on the show. But every now and then we find a couple Illinois fans in my comment section that I'm like, I don't like you at all. But it's all good. It's all good. I like Illinois fans. So it's the same thing happens with the Purdue fans. So it's not exclusive to Illinois. So all right, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. You can catch me most likely Saturday night, maybe with Kent, maybe with Zach. I have to figure that out still. We were going to go to the Big Ten championship game, but those plans fell through. So unfortunately we can't do that anymore. So we're going to try to come to you guys with some kind of recap or something live after the Big Ten championship game. If not, you'll be able to catch me and Zach on Sunday night, and then power ranking show for Big Ten basketball Monday morning, 10 a.m. You'll find me and Kent there again. And who knows, maybe Sonny will show up one of these days. We'll see.
It'll happen. Now that football season's over, I get to lock down on basketball, so no problem.
There you go. Locked down on basketball, locked on Illini. There you go. It's all together. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a good one.